So let's start with Donald Trump in the Gulf. What are your guys' first impressions there?
What do you think?
Great initiative. I think Saudi Arabia and UAE, or entire Gulf, I would say, is coming to an understanding that way forward is modernization, not going backwards and adopting to that old system and and letting your people suffer as the rest of the Muslim world is. So I think it's a great initiative. The East and West are coming together in peace and trade and relationship. And you guys were in Saudi Arabia, so you have seen how much of development is there, how much of development is in Dubai, and the standard of living, how much improved it is as compared to any other Muslim countries, say Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or any other country. So I think it's a great initiative, and rest of the Muslim world should follow rather than critiquing. But yeah, there are some problems that need to be addressed, but I don't think there is any problem that cannot be solved on the table. So that's my take.
So my opinion on that is this isn't about whether or not Saudi Arabia, UAE, or even America have problems. Saudi Arabia has one set of problems. Other Muslim countries have a different set of problems. What I will say, though, is that talking to lots of Gulf Arabs, they are an immensely pragmatic group of people for the most part, right? At least the ones who are in leadership right now. You talk to sort of inner city Riyadh Saudis, they're very pragmatic. And what I would say with a lot of ideological movements in the Muslim world, they're kind of inherently revolutionary.
Yes.
We can't be happy until every single problem that exists in the world has been solved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, how can you be living your nice life in Beirut when the Muslims of Kashmir are suffering? Or how can you live in your luxurious Islamabad apartment while there are Muslims suffering in Palestine? And to a certain extent, that sounds really noble because it's good to care about other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's good to care about people wherever they are. But what the way it's trying to solve those problems is trying to pile problem upon problem upon problem upon problem until the only solution is tear down these compromised structures and replace it with this gleaming, beautiful Islamic system, which is the solution to all of our problems at the same time.
Which is non-practical.
Which isn't practical, right? Whereas if you see the world as nation states, as the Bible does, if you look at the way Jesus describes the kingdom of God advancing, it's like leaven in a loaf of bread, right? It's like yeast in a loaf of bread, that it gradually solves the things around it. And the way Christianity approaches the world is, first you deal with your own heart. Then you deal with things in your own sphere, like your family. Then you deal with things like, you love your neighbor. Then you love, your nation. And then, perhaps then you can have some, high-minded ideas about how the world should work. And what the modern Gulf is doing is Saudi Arabia is saying, not how do we fix the problems of all Muslims everywhere, but how do we fix the problems of Saudi Arabia before we fix anything else?
Mm-hmm.
And what that's going to make a lot of people feel is that they're like given a bad deal. Like, okay, people who are big, powerful, and wealthy and should be speaking for us are not speaking for us because they're only interested in the affairs of Saudi Arabia and what directly affects them.
Yeah, I think one other aspect that we can look at is what matters as a citizen of a country. For you, for me, what it matters. We want security. We want good quality of life. We want resources around us that we can use and blah, blah, blah. If a country is offering that, that means that is a good thing to do, right? Instead of pushing some radical ideologies and forcing your governments to follow those radical ideologies, I think it is sooner or later all other Muslim countries have to follow. I wish there is an MBS in Pakistan. I wish there is an MBS in other Muslim countries, in Afghanistan, or say somewhere else, Yemen, to say the least. So all those Muslim countries need an MBS with a vision. Why I like MBS? Right? Why I like MBS? It is just for the reason that he has a modernization vision. He is modernizing its culture with the caveat that, okay, culture stays as our identity and it will always stay. Nobody can take it away from us, But at the same time, we have to educate our people. We have to progress in science and technology. We have to compete with the rest of the world. We can't just win battles with AK-47 no more, right? So that is, I think, the vision forward that I can see.
Yeah, I think what I was looking at, some of the material I was looking at, talked about this idea of this visit being a commitment to interests over ideology. And I like the way that that's put. Like, we have mutual interests, and we're not going to allow our ideological positions to define whether or not we will or will not relate to one another. So, in terms of how things have been done in the United States for the last 30, 40 years in foreign policy and everything else like that, there's this idea that America is not just the world's, security force, but we've turned into their moral police, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've turned into this idea that we have to, there's a great quote he said, right, in his speech, and Trump did. He said, "Too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it is our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins." And the article goes on to say, Trump instead, and then in quotes, believes it is God's job to sit in judgment. My job is to defend America and promote the fundamental interests of stability, prosperity, and peace. So I think what you had before in the States was this view that's kind of bipolar, right? Or the West, maybe not just the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that Islam is caustic and violent, and it has to be dealt with, through the sense of subjugation and maybe some sense of eradication, right? People start looking at it and they say, I've heard it on social media. You've heard it on social media. We should bomb it and turn it into a parking lot, take it over and do this and do that, which is, obviously ridiculous. Or what you'd call the progressive leftist way of looking at it is the West is evil and the West needs to be destroyed so that those systems, because they're, being run by indigenous peoples, should succeed. And both of those are harmful, right? They're both harmful ideologies. They're both caustic. So I think what Trump is doing is actually taking a step outside. I mean, one thing that was really interesting was when he ran for president and he condemned all of the wars, right? No American president has done that. They've never thrown, I didn't say thrown his own country under the bus, but when he got elected, it was a clear sign that things were going to be different as far as our engagement overseas militarily, what we were going to do and what we were not going to do. And I think this is kind of like a clean slate, right? Because it wasn't just Saudi Arabia at the party. It was Syria, right? The new Syrian government was invited to the party. Turkey was there. There was a bunch of different leaders from different areas. Qatar, right? We are going to focus on how we can mutually help each other, which I think is so much better, right? I think that I know maybe I'm being naive and it's awful because people, as long as Jews, Christians, minorities, and all this other stuff aren't being wiped out in those countries, I think this is a really positive thing. Nobody's saying you should gloss over obvious evil, right? But I think the idea that all of the human rights violations and all of the ideological differences and everything have to be solved with sanctions, right? Or with, military force or something like that, where, most people like you, right? And me and you, we're all married men now. So we all act in interest of our household.
Right.
Right. And the biggest carrot is the economic prosperity of our families. So they're taking this and applying this to a world stage, right? So if America is a family and Saudi Arabia is a family and Turkey and Syria and the other countries, Qatar are families, then what are we doing to promote the interests of our family and how can we work together instead of trying to club each other to death, right? And what that does, I believe, is draws a clear line, like in the Islamic sand, right? Where there is this world now of Muslims who are committed to this prosperity, right? Like the Abraham Accords, UAE, Saudi Arabia, all of these different countries that are either there or wanting to be there, right? And commit themselves to cooperation and prosperity versus the harmful ideologies that have taken root within Islam.
Yeah, it's no more us versus them. It's like we all together
Right.
as human beings, because Middle East is suffering. You mentioned Abrahamic Accord. Yes, now it is time to accept that Israel is a reality, and it will be a reality, and will always be.
Seriously.
So you have to accept it. I'm not saying that Israel has the right to take over all Palestine land. There should be a two-state solution or whatever solution you want to bring forth. But if that is being solved on a table, right, how much of a greater good we can see in Middle East. At the end of the day, as we mentioned, the life of people is getting better. United States lifted all the sanctions from Syria, so people, and then the Kurdish forces, they disarmed their armed group. So there's some positive development going on in Middle East, right?
As long as like the money that you're letting back into the country, like by lifting the sanctions, doesn't go to, hey, let's buy a whole bunch more weapons, let's triple down on a nuclear program, nuclear proliferation program. Let's use that extra money to do ethnic cleansing. But I do think that that's the expectation, right? I think that all of the countries here are like, at least saying publicly, like, maybe not fighting each other is a good idea, right? Like maybe we can just get to this place of, like, what does the world look like? I think when we were in the UAE and we were talking to somebody who was in the government there, and he was talking about priorities, right? And he said, our priority is that we want to take AI to Mars, which is like, right? We want to take AI and we want to deploy it on Mars. What the heck are you gonna, that's fine. Send all the murder bots there. I'm good. But the other thing was, we're building flying cars. We're building self-automated taxis. We are committed to, developing technology. And the other version of Islam is committed to, jihad and killing Jews. And these are his words, not mine. Right?
Oh,
his words, not mine. He said it. And he said, it's a different view of priorities. Right? So what I'm hoping this is like just going to wind up being the catalyst for some kind of, redefining of what actually is important. While, you said something about culture, right? Like the one thing, the Saudi, just as like Israel's not going anywhere, the Saudi culture, the culture in that area is not going anywhere. It will never go away.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and here's an interesting thing is that you've had the Gulf, which has been ruled by like a very specific version of Islam, which has been the sort of Salafi Wahhabi brand for, a long time now, to the extent that when Trump arrived in Abu Dhabi, you got this dance of these girls that are like, whipping their hair. And my initial reaction to that is just strange, but it kind of seems, but even my reaction is like, okay, well, it almost seems like it's like just there to like rub it in Islam's face.
Oh, no, totally.
But
the Crown Prince walked on the stage to YMCA.
Yeah.
That's totally.
But this is a cultural practice that goes back like hundreds, maybe more than 1,000 years.
Sure.
In that region, right? The dance is called the Khalij. The region is called Khaliji.
Right.
So it's not that they're doing it necessarily to spite Islam. It's just that this version of Islam, which had a stranglehold on the culture, is now really starting to lose its grip.
I mean, I think if you look at it from the other end, what's happening in Afghanistan is the worst form of Islam. right? Like women,
Hmm.
you know, they can't talk out loud, you know, they can't even talk in their houses. Like, what is next, you know? Like I saw that they took away the ability for women to be midwives, and then like so now the men are going to be birthing all the babies, but women can't go to men for medical care. So what happens? Like what weird ideological box have you put yourself in? So I like this version of
Oh yeah.
Islam much better, right?
So what I would say is that as Christians, like I can still disagree with Islam preached by Saudi and the UAE
Sure.
for different reasons and in different ways, but there's an immense opportunity to build friendship, have conversations, and work together with people
Right.
to like make the world we're living in a better place. I mean, now is the exact right time for Americans, Christians to be moving to places like this,
Yep.
making friends, building a culture of communication.